So today I am looking at another textile book. Now, as I've mentioned before, don't dismiss a book because it has textile in the title, because textile artists are very relevant to mixed media. They use a lot of mixed media and also to abstract artists, so you can get lots of inspiration and ideas from a textile book. So this is Textile Seascapes by Alison. I'm not sure if it's Whateley, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. But this book was published in 2024 by the Crowood Press. It's a paperback and it's got 96 pages. So it's one of those smaller books that are really brilliant to carry around with you. But it is packed full of information. So we'll have a look inside. So we have here Textile Seascapes. And you can see here one of Alison's seascapes. Now we have the contents with introduction, tools and equipment, finding inspiration, elements of composition, exploring colour and texture, creating a simple small seascape, working on a larger scale, creating a semi-abstract seascape, and adding hand stitching and mixed media. We then have mounting and framing, some manufacturers and suppliers, and the index. So as always, we start with an introduction, and as always I would say make a few minutes to read the introduction and you'll gain a little bit of an insight into the artist and the book. So we have here chapter 1. Now the sewing machine obviously is probably not so relevant if you only paint, but if you're working with textiles it's a very important part of your work to have a sewing machine. So we have here the sewing machine, setting it up, scissors and cutting tools, threads, cutting mat, needles, fabrics, miscellaneous equipment. And then here's the bit I really start to enjoy, because I don't really work with textiles anymore, though I did for many years, but I still find inspiration from a textile book. So chapter 2, finding inspiration. And we've got here visiting the coast. So actually going to the coastline and looking at the sea and the sand, the waves and the sky, that has to be your inspiration. And all the other bits and pieces you can find, from fishermen's nets and old bits of chain, lots of lovely things, not to mention pebbles and stones and shells. And another thing to do is to take lots of photos, and Alison does mention in here about taking your photos, looking at magazines and travel books and photography books for inspiration. And here we've got erosion of coastal rocks, a windy day with the waves crashing onto the beach, finding inspiration online, looking at other artists' work and sourcing materials that inspire you. So that's a bit more about getting fabrics and collecting the bits and pieces that you might use in your work. And charity shops are always a great place to find all these bits of fabric, old shirts and sheets, and just collect all your little bits and pieces, because when you work with textiles you never know what you're going to find useful. Just little scraps of thread and string and something at the end of this book, or near the end, I'll show you that I actually collected myself, not knowing what to do with, but I do know since I've read this book. So we then have here a look at how finished pieces of art reflect their sources of inspiration. So that's interesting. So there we have the inspiration and the finished art on this page. So although it's a small book, you've got nice clear photos. And there's another piece that Alison has done there. And then we move into chapter 3, elements of composition. Again, this is very relevant to any artist. And Alison mentions that often art books focus on a specific medium. But she also says in here that composition, it's something that you can really find a lot about composition is from photography books. And so if you go to your local library and look at the photography books, you might find out even more about composition than you will in an actual art book, because they usually just talk about one medium. So that's always very interesting. just to get these little added bits of information. So during this chapter, Alison talks about form and the placement of the elements. Here, this is where she's talking about the photography books and going to the public library. And we've got some examples here for your composition as well. And then we move on to colour and depth. Some lovely photographs in here. This is showing how the rocks get smaller the further away they are. And then chapter 4, exploring colour and texture, choosing a colour palette. So this is something that's very specific to your coastal landscapes, and each type of landscape you do, you're going to need your own colour palette. So it's Alison says always take your time when selecting the colour palette for your piece, because it's critical to your finished piece. And then we've got lots of blues and some soft greens, greeny undertones. So we then have a bit about colour theory and the colour wheel. Selecting fabrics by weight and texture, how to choose them to achieve a painterly feel. There are some boxes here with some important points as well to take note of. And we've got how to add texture through fabric manipulation. And chapter 5, creating a simple small seascape. So that is all step by step. Now the reason I do include these books is because a lot of people I know work with textiles, and I think it's an important part of art. And there's just so much information in these books. And then we have chapter 6, working on a larger scale. And we have another step by step of producing a larger piece, so nice and clear. So these bits are more relevant obviously to the textile artist. Then we move on to chapter 7, creating a semi-abstract seascape. And I think any artist would get some inspiration, some ideas from this chapter. Just how to use colours and to create some texture, because you can create lots of texture with your paint as well. And you can add bits and pieces to your paintings. So I just think this is a fun idea here. And we have chapter 8, adding hand stitching and mixed media. So we've got some lovely detail here, little beads and embroidery stitches, and of course you can embroider on paper as well. I have seen this done, I've mentioned it from another book, actually embroidering onto paper. So we've got a detail there for a French knot and a bullion stitch, adding buttons, beads and sequins, and using beach combing finds. So you find all these lovely little things on the beach. Now this is where I was so excited when I found this. Using rusty metal. Oh, we've got an interesting bit here, very important. Cleaning and disinfecting beach finds. And here, using rusty metal. Now, when I moved into my very old house, I found some rusty nails. In fact, I probably should have them here to show you. And here, Alison uses them to stitch a fence. So I have some rusty nails, old nails, Victorian nails, and I now know what to do with them. And we have here chapter 9, mounting and framing your artwork. So preparing your artwork for framing. Nice details there. And we're nearly at the end. So we have here displaying your artwork, framing options, manufacturers and suppliers, and the index. So I know this is a textile book, and I hope lots of people out there who like working with textiles will see this book and really enjoy using it, because it's about textiles. But even as I said, if you don't work with textiles, I think there's some relevant information in there, just a little bit of information. You don't have to buy this book if you don't work with textiles. Maybe you can pick it up at the library and look at it, or maybe put it on your Kindle. But I really love textile art, and because I worked with textiles for many years, I still look at textile books when they come out and think, oh, I wish this book had been available when I started out with textiles, and everything I did was very experimental. I just had to work with things on my own and go to classes and get information from teachers, but I love to use books. And this book is a lovely small book, easy to carry around with you, so if you are going to classes, it's a book you can pick up and put in your bag with you, or just read on the train or the bus. So that's Textile Seascapes. I hope you enjoyed having a look at that.